Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining me for Walking with the Word. Today I want to talk about wounds and scars and healing. Some years ago, when I was a teenager, I got into the habit of longboarding. So a longboard is kind of like a skateboard, but a bit longer and goes a bit faster. And the idea is that you can go kind of long distances down roads. Now, I live in Sheffield, which is a hilly city. And as a teenager, I'd gone up one of the hills in Sheffield on the road, lovely summer day. And I started going down this long hill on my longboard and picking up speed. Problem is, I wasn't that good or that experienced on the longboard. I was just giving it a go and trying to learn. And of course, when you're a teenager on a longboard, what do you do except just take your t-shirt off? Obviously no safety equipment or anything like that. And I was shooting down this long steep road, getting faster and faster, and I began to feel the board kind of wobbling a little bit under me, thinking, this is a bit hairy. I don't quite know how to slow this thing down. I talked about how I learned snowboarding. Actually, it was a similar kind of just throw yourself down the hill and see what happens attempt. And the problem was, as the board started wobbling, I couldn't slow it down, so I put my foot down to slow down, and suddenly too much friction threw me forward onto the road. Now, bearing in mind I wasn't wearing a t-shirt or any other kind of top, I basically slid down this road on my stomach and got all these scars kind of down my stomach, and had one particularly bad one around my hip where it was just bleeding loads. And I ended up going back to my home in Sheffield and kind of treating my wounds. Now, what was interesting is I remember at the time, I don't know why, but I never told my dad about this. I just kind of waited for him to notice that I wasn't quite walking properly. And I can't remember what my mindset was, but I remember feeling challenged recently by God over something, and God said this: don't hide your pain from your Father. When I came home that day, I had wounds all over my body, well, mostly down my front, my chest and around my hip. I had a lot of wounds. My body had taken a beating that day. Now, wounds are dangerous. Why are wounds so dangerous? The danger of a wound is that it can get infected, it can get worse. Healing hasn't begun. Now, healing's a natural process. It takes time, but it also takes doing the right things. You have to be intentional about your healing. If you ignore a wound, it can just get worse and it can cause more damage. So there's intentionality, but it can sometimes just take a long time for us to heal and to let wounds turn into scars. But once there's a scar, it's great. It tells a story, and I love looking at my own scars and telling people stories about my own mishaps and injuries. But I also love hearing other people's stories as well, because it's something gritty about a scar, isn't there? So there's nothing wrong with having scars, and there are some things, I think, spiritually, or things in our lives that will affect us and hurt us and leave a scar. But as long as the wound is healed and it's not in that kind of dangerous infectious stage, we don't need to worry about our scars. They're part of our story, they're part of our history. But what's this idea about hiding our pain? Why do we sometimes stay away from the very God who can heal us in our pain? Why do we sometimes want to hide our pain from God? And I've been reflecting on this recently and come up with 3 things that I think cause us to hide our pain from God. And I want you to think about scars in your own life, whether they're emotional or spiritual scars, areas where you're hurting, and consider whether you have really brought them to God. Have you got close to him over them? So the first reason that I think we sometimes hide our pain from our Father is because we find that healing happens when we feel safe, and we don't feel safe letting anyone know about our pain. We want to keep our pain hidden. And I want you to picture, it's kind of sad, this illustration, but picture a cat that's just been hit by a car. I don't know if you've ever seen a cat that's been hit by a car, but what you'll see is they just run and hide. They try and find a safe place. They don't want to be around anyone. It's kind of like the safety of solitude, so they can just kind of lick their wounds. So you never really know how badly or a cat's been injured if it's been hit by a car. And you'll go around looking around the area, and sometimes you can find a cat, and if you do, it'll probably be really well hidden. And I think that can be like us with our spiritual scars, our spiritual wounds. We don't even want our Creator near us. We just want to be completely on our own, because that's where we feel safest. But actually, let me tell you, if that's how you're feeling, true safety is in God. He's the ultimate healer. He is the safest place you can be if you've been wounded and you need healing. So that was the first reason. Maybe it's like the safety of solitude. But the second thing is, there's a sense in which our injuries are self-inflicted. Certainly my longboarding injury that I just shared about as a teenager, that would be an example of a self-inflicted wound, right? So I was a bit of a silly teenager, out on my longboard, no top, a bit embarrassing. Why would I want to tell my dad about that? You know, there's a sense of shame and embarrassment through a self-inflicted injury, and that can be so true of our spiritual scars and our spiritual wounds. So many of them can be self-inflicted. We've made bad choices, maybe even knowingly, maybe even despite God calling us and challenging us to step away from something, we've stayed in it and it's hurt us, and we call that a self-inflicted injury. And the problem with self-inflicted injuries is we feel like we should be the ones to heal it and make it better. But healing is in God's hands. Jesus came into the world. One of the main parts of his ministry was physically, emotionally, and spiritually healing people. He was a healer in his heart. His presence was healing. He would speak healing and it would happen. He would lay his hands on people and healing would come. And sometimes it would be healing over time. Sometimes it would be instantaneous. Normally when Jesus was performing miracles, the healing happened very quickly. But I just think there's some things where in our relationship with God, the healing might be slower. As long as we're in his presence, that's the key thing. As long as he's the one doing the healing and we're getting vulnerable with him, we're trusting him, we're sitting in his presence, we're asking for healing, we're letting his life wash over us, that's where we'll find healing, guys. So what's the third reason that we sometimes hide our pain from our Father? I think it's if we cross boundaries. I think sometimes when we do things that our parents have told us specifically not to do, and we specifically disobey them, we cross a boundary, maybe well into something sinful, we don't want to bring God into our lives, because not only do we need healing, we need forgiveness, and we feel really bad and we feel really guilty, and we don't want to look our Father in the eye. We don't want him to know that we're in pain. We don't want him to know that we've hurt ourselves through disobeying him. Trust God. Don't hide your pain from him. Don't stay away from your Father, the source of your healing. He can heal you, and he will heal you. He'll forgive you and he'll wash you, even if it's a self-inflicted injury, and even if it's an injury that you've got through directly disobeying him. He cares about you and he wants to heal you. And that's the lovely thing about Jesus. He went out his way to heal. He took time to heal. He even sacrificed his own rest and his own peace so that he could heal and care and love people that had come to him. So if you do have wounds in your life, if you have areas where you've been physically or emotionally or spiritually hurt, and remember this includes physical healing as well, don't be afraid to come to God and to ask him for healing and to sit in his presence and to wait. And don't be angry or impatient if the healing doesn't come quickly enough, because we can sometimes learn through a season of pain. We can sometimes grow through pain. God's not sadistic. He doesn't want to keep us in pain for his own pleasure. He doesn't delight in our pain, but he does delight in our growth. But just trust as well that his priority and his love and his care, he's going to heal you and he's going to look after you. And he's got healing in his hands. It says, by his wounds we were healed. Jesus sacrificed himself so that we could know healing and wholeness. So if you're kind of thinking about some areas in your life where you do have pain and this is kind of resonating with you, I actually want to pray with you for healing now. And don't be afraid, whatever type of healing that is, whether it's physical, emotional or spiritual, stop and join me in prayer. Offer yourself to God and humble yourself before him and ask for forgiveness and for healing with me. Father, I just pray for anyone who's listening to this today who carries wounds, who carries pain. Help them not to hide their pain from you. Help them not to stay away from you, Lord. May they know that you're a safe place, that they can trust you, they can rest in your presence, and that in your presence they'll find peace and they'll find healing. Father, I pray that you would begin to heal our spiritual wounds now, Father. Heal our emotional wounds. Heal the areas where we've been hurt and damaged by other people, Lord. Heal the areas where we've been hurt and damaged by ourselves. And Father, may we find fullness and peace and healing in your name. Amen. So thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I'll be putting these videos up every morning. God bless you, take care and have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.